Well, hello, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to another all-new edition, an all-new episode of the PR from the Heart Children's Book Spotlight Series. To be precise, we have reached episode number 146. That is the 146th trolley stop here at PR from the Heart and the Children's Book Spotlight Series. My name is John Masiulionis. Thank you for spending your time with us. Your post-Easter celebration is right here this week on the Children's Book Spotlight Series. We have just returned from our recent travels to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where we had the opportunities to spend some quality time with one of our favorite neighbors. You remember him and you love him as the beloved Mr. McFeely on the long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We know him and we love him as David Newell, our co-host on the PR from the Heart Neighborly Reviews bookcast. So we hope that you are enjoying episode number 14 of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast, which we had the opportunities to record at Point Park University's Center for Media Innovation. And heading to the Fred Rogers Center was such a wonderful trip to spend with our favorite neighbor out in Pittsburgh. And it's very interesting how this all comes full circle to this week's Children's Book Spotlight Series. You know, in order for the trolley to travel from San Diego out to Pittsburgh, you got to take an airplane, right? So I found myself in the Pittsburgh International Airport, headed back to San Diego on a flight to Boston, and managed to stop at a bookstore. I said, books, why not? There has to be some sort of children's books in this bookstore. And I'm looking, and it's so interesting because I smiled. And a lot of times when you're at the airport, you're just like, I just want to get home. It's kind of like you're rushing, you're going from point A to point B. But I took a nice breath and I smiled because the book, the very special, beautiful, heartfelt children's book that we are sharing on this week's edition of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, there were so many copies. There were multiple copies of this brand new children's book entitled Our World is a Family. Now, before we welcome both of our guests here on the program this week, one of the resonating themes over the near 4 years that we have done the Children's Book Spotlight Series is reminding all of us that we're loved and we're special just the way that we are. In the words of our favorite neighbor, Mr. Rogers. And no matter what we look like, no matter our age, our race, our sex, our color, our creed, especially our neighbors from other parts of the world, when they come to the United States, they may feel lost or scared, afraid, alone. They might feel like, who's going to accept me? Well, again, leave it to this brand new children's book to help us see the way. We encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Amazon.com. You can purchase your copy of Our World is a Family, which is now available courtesy of our friends and neighbors at SourceBooks Kids. If Amazon is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, you can leave a 5-star review, as that is one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for our special guests, our newest neighbors here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series who are joining us. The trolley doesn't have to travel very far. We go from San Diego out to Los Angeles, so we stay in Southern California. Miry Whitehill, Jennifer Jackson, joining us this week on the program as our featured guests here on episode number 146 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. Ladies, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for birthing this beautiful children's book, especially right now at this particular point in time. How are the both of you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having us.
It's such a thrill to talk to you, John, and thank you so much for having us.
It is my pleasure, my honor to have the both of you as part of our neighborhood here this week at the Children's Book Spotlight Series. We're going to be diving into this wonderful book and your work that you are doing specifically as well, Miry, to talk about how this whole process actually began. We encourage all of you who are tuning in to this week's edition of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, if this neighborly energy is opening up your heart, if it's lifting your spirits, if you feel that this message needs to be shared with someone in need, to remind our fellow neighbors that together we are all a global family. If you haven't had the opportunities to do so, to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel and to share this very special trolley stop. That is episode number 146 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series on your favorite social media platforms of your choosing. Miry's List. This is really where it all began. Normally the origin story, Jennifer and Miry, kind of goes to the beginning of the book, but there was kind of like an origin story before the origin story. For those who are tuning into the program this week who are learning about Miry's List for the first point in time, could you share with us really where all of this began, for you and why it was important for you to help refugees during their time of need here.
Yes, thank you so much. It's such an important question. So Our World as a Family is a book that Jennifer and I worked for 3 years on writing and putting into the world. But the beginning of the message of this book actually goes back 6 years. In 2016, I had the great and spontaneous, unplanned opportunity to meet a family who had recently moved to Los Angeles, my city, from Syria. And the reason why I met this family is because they had a baby who was just about the same age as my youngest. And I had a 5-month-old and a 3.5-year-old at the time. My boys are now 6 and 9. So a lot has changed in the last 6 years. But the beginning of Miry's List is meeting one family in their new apartment. They had lived there for 3 weeks before I had met them there. And just sitting with them in their home, I could look around the room and I could notice that their apartment was not set up to be fully functional, safe, or even comfortable for their family. And I didn't have at the time context about really what was the circumstance or the systemic issue that was leading to what I was seeing in the apartment. But it struck me because I lived just 20 minutes away and I had an abundance of a lot of the things that they needed to make their home functional. So, first things first, I went home, I grabbed a spare crib mattress that I had in my garage and I drove back to their house. And, I didn't speak Arabic. They didn't speak English. And so they were not really expecting me to come back, but they could see what I brought and they were very excited. And I went into their apartment and I put the crib mattress in the crib that was donated to them by a church. But without the mattress, that crib is not functional. And we put the sheets and we put a little, blanket for the baby, and the family was really thrilled. And, I was really inspired at that moment to find out what else they needed. And we walked around their apartment. I called a friend who speaks Arabic. He was our interpreter on FaceTime. He helped us to make a list of the other things that family needed to make their home functional and safe for their family. And by the way, in addition to this little baby, they also had 5-year-old twin girls. So there was a lot of excitement of just, making new friends. And, over the course of a few weeks, once I drove home and I typed the list that we had made into a Facebook post, that's when I started learning about how many people I knew who wanted to jump in to help resettling refugees. And they just wanted the mechanism to do it. Fast forward 6 years, Miry's List is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have just enrolled our 870th family in our 12-month program for resettling refugee families. We work with families from places like Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, most recently Ukraine. We help families get their homes set up, and we help them to build a community support system, to make American friends, to connect with their new communities. I think it's really important to note that most of the families who are coming here as refugees to the United States, they come with permission from the US government. They also are coming from communities where they had extended support systems. They had cousins, aunts, uncles, friends, teachers, everyone living right there. And so it is not that difficult to imagine what it might feel like to lose that sense of community. And then the amazing, heartwarming feeling of recognizing that maybe you still have access to that in a different way in your new country. And that is how Our World as a Family came to be.
Jennifer, Miry is such a bright light. I can feel the lightness and the love that she's sharing all the way out here in San Diego. Could you share with our listeners and viewers and our friends and neighbors how the two of you connected, and really we go from that origin story to the origin story of Our World as a Family, and how all of this kind of came to be after some time?
Oh, sure. So yes, she lit up my life. I learned about what she was doing with Miry's List and newly arriving families, and I was so inspired. And I had written a children's book before. And so for me, that kind of storytelling is always on my mind. And I just thought, there is something here. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but there's something here to connect to readers, to families, to people who want to take action and put this into practice in a daily way that can be so beautiful in welcoming newcomers. And so I just sort of reached out, and we knew each other a little bit from a parenting group that we were in together, but we really weren't as that close. And so for me, it felt a little nerve-wracking. I just wanted to see if there was a possibility. And as you can expect, Miry's like, well, yeah, sure, absolutely, let's do it. What does that mean? Let's go. What do I do? And we just started meeting and throwing around ideas. And like she said, the whole process took about 3 years. And oh my goodness, I feel so fortunate, because even though we knew each other from the parenting group, this is how we really bonded and became close friends and got to know each other's families. And she truly is a light in my life and everyone's life that she's in. And so it's like, we joke around now, but it's so true. If you can write a book with one of your good friends, do it, because that's the best way to do it. And so, yes, I wanted to find a way to work with her to put this message into a book that could reach children and thereby reaching families to welcome newcomers. And that's how it came to be.
It feels, Miry, that this whole process has been a labor of love. And, through the human experience, we can have our challenges, our difficulties, our obstacles, our problems, our stressors, our troubles, our worries. If you notice, all those words kind of have the same energy, so to speak. So sometimes when you're doing something such as writing a children's book, it can be rainbows and gumdrops. It's all gravy. It's all super fun. But sometimes we experience some challenges. Could you share with us a little bit about, were there any sorts of challenge when you knew, okay, this is going to be a book, our world as a family, it's going to get out there. It obviously has the support from SourceBooks Kids, which is fantastic. Were there any sorts of challenges or difficulties along the way? And if so, what were some of the things that help you that help you and Jennifer to navigate through to get to the other side of the process?
Absolutely. There were definitely challenges in this process, but also in a larger way, the challenges that Miry's list, and we have a staff now of 18 people who are working every day in support of the families that we're working with. Half of our staff is people who have graduated from our program as well. So these are people that have lived experience going through this process. They represent hope for new arrival families. Our biggest challenge is that we are working with a population of people who has sacrificed so much to be here. And they are carrying with them every day loss and grief and loneliness and homesickness and missing their parents and their friends and the places that they recognize, the place where they met their wife, the place where they got married, the school where they, attended kindergarten, and they don't know if they'll ever be able to go back and show their kids where they went to school. This is hard. There are a lot of really difficult feelings that come along with resettling in a new country and leaving so much behind. And I think that, how that played out in the process of writing a book that is centered around the experience of people who have lost so much. We wanted to make sure that we were not, first of all, putting someone's suffering on display. We also wanted to make sure that we were being representative of all of the variety of experiences that people go through, because, the one thing that refugees all have in common is that they have fled violence and persecution, and they cannot go home. That is the definition of how somebody gets the refugee status from the UNHCR that's overseeing all of the refugees in all of the world. So, how did we combat against that challenge? We leaned in to the team at Miry's List, and throughout the entire course of the book, before we even connected with SourceBooks and connected with Nomar, who is our illustrator who brought the words to life, we offered the words to the team, and we had them reviewed again and again by people who have lived through this. And having them as part of the process of not only the book, but also the development of programming at Miry's List. All of the programs that we offer to families for the year that we work with them, they are built from people who have gone through this and they understand the challenges. And the reality is, it is not only hard feelings. There are also, when families arrive here, they are grateful. They are happy to be safe. They are glad that their children have access to school and a future and a career. It is not only hard feelings, and I hope that also came through in the book, because this is not a book about suffering. This is a book about empowering people to be vulnerable. It takes a lot of bravery to walk up to someone who you don't know and to say hello. And I think that's something that should be celebrated. And I hope that came through in the book.
Absolutely. It 100% it does. Jennifer, you've been around in the kidlit community for some time. When you knew that this process was starting to take form and shape, one of the things that really, whenever you connect with someone and you have a relationship with someone, at the end of the day, it's how something or someone makes you feel. Working with this process to have the book be published, and now you're sharing it right now. We're going to dive into the pages of the book momentarily. What did it mean to you, not just professionally, but personally, but knowing the fact that you were truly going to be making a difference in the lives of your fellow neighbors? What has all of this meant to you?
It means so much. I was actually in a graduate program to become a therapist when Miry and I started writing this book. And so it was in the top of my mind, not only helping individual people, but then how that can sort of scale up and out and translate to doing more. And this fit right into that personal mission that was developing for me. And oh my goodness, being able to virtually meet Nomar Perez, our illustrator, and the entire team at SourceBooks, it was truly a dream come true as far as a publishing experience. They understood the mission right from the beginning. They were so on board with it. They brought so much excitement and joy. Nomar brought such beauty and just excitement in the faces, in the connection, in the illustrations. Sometimes it felt like doing this also throughout a pandemic was a refuge for me emotionally. And it was also a way for me to connect. Part of my family came from Syria. In the 50s, they moved here. And so there was a lot I didn't know. And I was able to reach out and start asking questions about that as well. How did you come here? What was it like? Who welcomed you? There weren't programs like Miry's List then. And the neighbors that welcome them are still connected to that side of my family after all these decades. And I can hear it in their voices, just how much that meant to them. And so for me, this is all, again, through the pandemic, all the isolation, it's felt connected to me in a way that I never knew I needed. And so it's been incredibly special.
That's so wonderful. And thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. And again, for those of you who are spending some time with us here this week, we appreciate you tuning in to a very special edition of the PR from the Heart Children's Book Spotlight Series, our 146th Trolley Stop. Our featured guests, Miry Whitehill and Jennifer Jackson. We are about ready to dive into the pages of their brand new children's book, Our World as a Family, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at SourceBooks Kids. You can head on over to Amazon.com if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, and leave a 5-star review after purchasing, reading, and enjoying your copy of Our World as a Family. That is one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Miry and for Jennifer, the wonderful work that Nomar, their illustrator, the team at SourceBooks Kids are doing for children, parents, families, educators, those who love great children's books. Or you can just travel to the Pittsburgh International Airport like I did. If you really want to be advantageous, drive to Pittsburgh or fly to Pittsburgh, go to the airport, just get a copy of the book, and then it's a real special copy. That's just what I did, by the way, when I was in Pittsburgh traveling back over here to San Diego. Diving into the pages of the book, Miry, it literally felt like yourself and Jennifer and Nomar, the team at SourceBooks Kids, all on the same page. And a lot of the times when most people who know the children's book Spotlight series and have tuned into the program for nearly the past 4 years, everyone is not like on the phone with one another every hour and saying, can you approve this illustration? Or it's kind of like there's three hearts beating as one. Yeah. Yours, Jennifer's, Nomar's. Could you take us through the process, like what that looked like for yourself, and knowing the fact that this was a very sensitive subject? Why was it important for you to be able to treat this with the decorum, the care, the reverence, and the respect that it deserves? Because of course, when we're talking to little ones about this kind of message, talking about refugees, it's something that can seem, as I mentioned, a little scary, or where to begin. And it's you're really treating this with such love and caring compassion. So can you kind of walk us through the process, and also to walk us through the book as well too, if you could?
Absolutely. You're so right that it really is kind of like three hearts beating as one. And when we had the manuscript done for Our World as a Family, it was, the words that you see in the book and very few kind of visual, imaginative ideas that ultimately that is what was sent to our illustrator. So he wasn't, going off of, oh, here's a book of images of, what we are inspired to see in what you come up with. But, there's a page, there's a spread where it's talking about where people live. And it says, people live in big cities, beep, beep, and small towns. Good morning. And, I remember seeing that for the first time when Nomar came back with his first draft, and it was exactly what I had imagined when I had read those words so many times to my own kids and to their friends. And I think there was maybe only 2 or 3 rounds of visual edits and notes. Like it was a very fast process. There was not a lot of back and forth. And I think people who know Miry's List as an organization and as a brand, you can look at us on our Instagram page and just kind of scroll through. And the thing that you're going to notice is that Miry's List is about people. And I think, the original title of Our World as a Family was called People of the World. And we ended up changing the title of the book, but keeping People of the World as the educational kind of information resource center that's through Miry's List, that's a companion to the book. And, if you don't even read the book, you just kind of like look through the pages, and I'm imagining, okay, I'm 4 years old, I'm looking at this book and I don't really understand what the letters mean, but here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing people. And, when I saw the pictures for the first time, I had so many different feelings, but it really just felt like that warm feeling when you knock on someone's door and you say hello and you welcome them, and then they welcome you into their home, and you get to sit down on the floor and have some tea and get to know each other, and the kids can play, and you can just talk about just who you are and what you're all about and what's important to you. I think that really comes through visually in the book, and I don't take that for granted.
It does, and this actually leads me into my next question for yourself, Jennifer, is that I literally feels like the spirit of Mr. Rogers is with the three of us in this interview. There is such a neighborly feeling in this book, and that's why when we were talking in the PR from the Heart Green Room before we all hopped on this wonderful conversation, the fact that I find it absolutely divinely synchronistic on how this physical copy of the book that I'm holding in my hand was actually in Pittsburgh, the birthplace of Mr. Rogers. He encouraged all of us to welcome new neighbors, even if it's someone that you're meeting for the first time, someone that comes from a different area, a different country. We always like to be able to provide some tangible information for those who tune into the program, whether it be parents, educators, grandparents, that they can extract and they can share with the little ones that are in their life. So what are some ways in which, especially for our little ones, that we can help to welcome new neighbors into our community, especially right now as we're starting to become on the other side of the pandemic?
Oh yeah, so neighbors right in your own community, you can do a lot. You can welcome them with your words. Learn how to say hello in their language. We even have on the inside of the The book jacket, it's a little hidden gem. It's a poster with how to say, hello, I'm here, I love you. And so you can learn how to do that. You can bring gifts of food. You can ask them what their favorite foods are, cook together. The kids can play together if they want. Those are the kind of up close and personal things that people can do right away. If you want to learn more about what to do long distance or have an impact on someone's home in a different way, go to myryslist.org. And there are lists where you can send welcome gifts right to a family, directly from you to the family. And you see exactly what they need, whether it's a new pan for cooking that favorite food or pillows for the beds of their children, things like that they don't have sometimes. Kids in your communities, in classrooms, summer camps this summer coming up, you can write welcome letters. And there are activity kits that you can access either through the website, or you can contact one of us through social media and we can direct you to the right place. And kids can write welcome letters, and thousands pour into Miry's List. And those letters are beautifully illustrated, drawn, written, whatever people want to do, stickers for little kids who maybe aren't writing yet. And those are included in welcome packages to people who are resettling. And so not only are they getting perhaps a welcome blanket or a gift, a housewarming gift, but they're getting a welcome from your words, from your heart, that lets them know you're wanted here. Just like we say in the book, you're safe, you're loved, you're important to us. We want you here. And that's another way, no matter where you are in the country, in the world, you can send the letters to Miry's List, and the organization can send them to resettling refugees here in America.
Those are fantastic ways, and I appreciate you communicating those in the process. These illustrations, they're just so captivating and beautiful. One of the things that I really love, and I had shared this with both before we began the recording of our interview, is that one of my favorite songs from Mr. Rogers is "There Are Many Ways to Say I Love You." And of course, if you're a fan of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, you remember Officer Francois Clemens, and he actually sang that several times during the program as well too. And one of the spreads in the book, the illustration spreads, is learn to say I love you in a new language. And it's just so good to see everyone. Like, I know that life isn't always rainbows and gumdrops. We have to have the contrast. We have to have the light with the dark. We have to have the grief and the sadness with the happiness and joy, so that we can truly be grateful for the entire earthly experience. But we've gone through quite a bit over the course of these past several years. So it's just good to see. I'm putting out the energy of these children hugging and parents spending time with their children. And we're just kind of putting that out into the ethers, putting that out into the universe. We're beginning to wind down our time with our featured guests here on episode number 146 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, Miry Whitehill and Jennifer Jackson. We are sharing their brand new children's book, Our World is a Family, illustrated by Nomar Perez, published by some of our favorite neighbors at SourceBooks Kids. You can head on over to Amazon.com if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. You can leave a 5-star review, as that is one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Miry, for Jennifer, for Nomar, for the team at SourceBooks Kids, to remind them that they are doing wonderful work for children, parents, families, educators, refugee families, those who love great children's books in the process. We've also included the official websites for Jennifer and for Miry's List, so you can continue the wonderful conversation post-Children's Book Spotlight series. One of the questions that it's just so interesting, because it just came to mind in the flow of our conversation, is that we hear the term neighbor. Not even if you're just a fan of Mr. Rogers, but we live next door to our neighbor, right? And I think it's important, where we've seen what's been happening over these past several years, and it's a matter of what can we do? How can we show up better for ourselves? How can we show up better for the people that are in our lives, those that we love, we care about, and serve? So one of the final questions that I wanted to ask, and Miry, I'll start off with yourself, and I'll ask the same question to you, Jennifer. What does it mean to you to be a good neighbor in 2022?
I am so lucky because I have such amazing neighbors. One of the most recent ways that my neighbor was here for me is she let me borrow tomato paste when I was out, and I was trying to make my kids spaghetti bolognese was their dinner, and I was out of tomato paste, and I was able to text my neighbor and ask if she had extra, and she walked it over to my house. And I think that okay, that's a very simple answer, but that really is what it's all about. We have this saying at Miry's List, and we put it at the front of a lot of our materials that we share with our board members, our volunteers, our donors. And it says, "We are your neighbors. We aren't going anywhere." And I think that whether it's tomato paste or a helping hand or help to figure out, what day does the garbage pickup come on our street? The neighbors, the people that are surrounding families who are new in a community, they are the ones that will always be there, regardless of who's in the White House, what is our government's official stance on immigration, regardless of how laws are changing in our country, or even what is the latest refugee crisis. We're seeing a new refugee crisis unfold before our eyes while we are still in the process of responding to another active refugee crisis. So now we are kind of witnessing two separate but very important situations, assessing how can we show up for these folks who don't necessarily have any information about the communities that they are now part of in the United States. I wanted to also just share with you one of the welcome letters that we received this week, just so you can hear what it sounds like when you're writing a welcome letter to someone who you don't know and you might never meet. Here it is. It's from Genevieve. "Dear friend, welcome to the United States. Coming to a new place is really difficult. You have a lot to be proud of. Your family's needs are important, and we care deeply about your well-being. With gratitude, Genevieve." That's it. And this one came with a really cute drawing. Looks like anime. But this is how simple it can be. And whether or not we're living next door to someone is actually not how we define neighbor. And a lot of organizations that work with resettling refugees, they tend to use the word refugee to refer to people who anyone who's ever been a refugee is just called refugee. We have been really conscientious about how we use our words, and we refer to the families who have arrived instead of as refugees, but as new neighbors, or our newest neighbors, or our new American neighbors. These are people who are here because they cannot go home. And whether we show up for them or not, that will be remembered by them. So there's truly a generational impact that we can make through this work, these words.
Jennifer, if there's anything that you wanted to add on to that, what do you feel that it means to be a good neighbor in 2022?
I mean, how do you add to that? That's that's kind of everything. Ditto. When I was thinking of that, when you asked the question, I was thinking of specific neighbors that we have, and we care about each other a lot. And I just think about that. We show up for each other. You can see behind Miry there on the wall, and then also in the book, the phrase "Anahuna," which means I'm here. I know that I am here for these neighbors. They are here for me. Everything from, taking care of each other's puppies, to sharing treats, to watching over each other's homes when someone is gone, to just generally looking out for each other. And so I think of that when I think of the immediate neighbor. But like Miry said, our neighbors are everywhere. They're in our community, they're in our city, they're in our state, our country, our world. And I think this book has its way of expanding our understanding of that, of who our neighbors are and who our community is and what we can do to welcome everyone, and that there's a place for everyone.
There very much is. And before we conclude our conversation, there's two special ways that we like to close out each Children's Book Spotlight Series episode. You had shared with me, Miry, and if you'd be kind to share this exciting news that in the summertime, for all of our friends and neighbors out on the West Coast in the city of Angels, in Los Angeles, California, there is something very special. Our World as a Family is being brought to life in a very heartfelt and meaningful way. Could you share with us a little sneak peek about what that looks like?
Absolutely. We are so excited that we have partnered with the Ford Theater in Los Angeles to present a stage show called Our World as a Family. It is coming up July 16th, 2022. It is a show that is in 3 parts that is all about the experience of resettling in Southern California and welcoming our new neighbors. And there are so many surprise guests that are going to be there with us that night. It's an ensemble show. So it is, in the same vein of Miry's List, it is a joyful experience about what it means to show up for someone who's new. And there's going to be comedy and music and some readings. And of course, the book will be presented, both being read by professional actors, but also in a theatrical way that we hope will reach people on another level. Maybe somebody who has heard of the book but hasn't heard of Miry's List, or vice versa, will be sitting there that night and not just, oh, now I'm learning about refugees. This is how the government, classifies a refugee visa. It's not about that. It's about how the system works for families who are resettling in the United States, how it feels for families, and then the third part, and most importantly, how we can help. And it's 1,100 seats. This is probably about 3 times larger than the next event that, the next biggest event that we've ever done. So we are definitely crossing a lot of milestones, and Jennifer and I are co-producing it with the Ford Theater, July 16th.
That sounds like so much fun. So yes, it's T-minus less than 2 months away, which is absolutely fantastic. The 2 ways that we like to close out each children's book spotlight series, we like to give a little tip of the cap to, of course, our favorite neighbor who we mentioned several times during the course of today's and this week's program, Mr. Rogers. He did this several times on The Neighborhood. Most importantly, he did this at the Daytime Emmys shortly before he passed, when he received his Lifetime Achievement Award. He always kept the time, whether it be 15 seconds, 30 seconds, or a full minute. He encouraged us to remember those who helped love us into being. Those neighbors who were earth angels on our path, when maybe we were navigating through a challenging time or through a struggling chapter in our life. Who would be some of those individuals that come to mind, Miry, starting with yourself? Who helped love you, Miry Whitehill, into being?
So easy. What an easy question for me. First person who comes to mind is my grandmother. She passed in 2020. Her name was Diane Lilly. And she was my guiding light as a kid, and she still is. She's actually someone who introduced me to who refugees are, and demonstrated for me as a young child what it looks like to invite someone who is new in our community to the dinner table. I remember my grandmother pulling me aside in the kitchen one day when we were having one of these dinners with, I believe this was a family from Russia who had just moved to Maryland, where I grew up. And she pulled me aside in the kitchen, and she let me know how important it is that I make sure that they feel welcome at our table. And, I didn't think of it much at the time, but, these are all these years later. I'm not going to say exactly how many years, because I don't want to age myself, but it's been a lot of years since then. And her words stick with me every single day. And I feel so lucky to have had that person in my life. So it's Bubby, Diane Lilly.
Jennifer, who would be someone or someones you'd like to publicly recognize who helped love you into being?
Oh, my mother, for sure. She is such a generous, joyful heart. And she was a nurse for many, many years, and then became a professor, teaching others how to be nurses in the world. Wow. And I think I've learned so much about how to love, how to give, how to care for others from her. And yeah, she's the first person that came to my mind, for sure.
I think Mr. Rogers said that no matter where those individuals are, whether they're near or far, or whether they're in heaven, knowing the fact that you're thinking of them right now and the difference that they made on your life, and thus the impact that you're making on other people's lives. The perfect way to close out each children's book spotlight series, I really believe that we are all here to help one another to bring heartfelt dreams, desires, visions, and goals to life. Your organization, Miry, was just a vision in your mind's eye at one point in time, and eventually it became a reality. So a little tip of the cap to one of our favorite Disney animated classics of all time. We go back to 1992. We go back to the Genie of the Lamp and the late Robin Williams. We have a little segment that we like to call 3 Wishes. So the both of you have given freely, compassionately, lovingly from your hearts for a long period of time to children, parents, families, educators, and now refugee families all around the world. So this is your time to be able to receive. Jennifer, I will start off with yourself. you're being given 3 wishes. Now, you thought this was just going to be an interview talking about your book, and now it's like, oh my, I'm getting 3 wishes on top of that. Hooray! What would your 3 wishes be?
Oh goodness, 3 wishes. The only thing I can think of is I would give them to my son. I would wish health, and I would wish him happiness, and to thrive in this world. Truly, I think I would just give them to him right away.
That is a very giving and thoughtful gesture. Miry, 3 wishes for yourself. What would they be?
Wow, Jennifer, I am not going to be as selfless.
Please don't. I couldn't help it because.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would wish for a physical space for Miry's List to live. I dream of the Miry's List Community Center, and I've been dreaming of that for many years. We have never had a physical space. We are mostly people working from home, and we were even that before the pandemic. We had some co-working spaces, but I do imagine one day living in, being in a physical space together with our team where families can come visit. We might even have short-term housing on site for those families, having a daycare, having a cafe that is run by resettling chefs. Of course, having a library where our book and the books of so many others can live and be shared with whoever comes through.
I volunteer as tribute to be a librarian.
Yay! So I guess, so I have 2 more wishes. Is wishing for more wishes an option?
I think that the only default is that you can't wish for more wishes and you can't make someone fall in love with you. Those are the automatic qualifiers from way back in the day.
Oh, I'm so lucky. I have so much love coming at me already. I don't even have to wish for that. But I guess I'll give one of them to my kids, that they should have health for their whole lives. They are 6 and 9 years old, Ruben and Savo. And the third wish, I mean, I guess it would be to meet Mr. McFeely from Mr. Rogers. I would love to meet the OG mail delivery person. That's going to be my third wish.
That is appropriate to put a pin in that. Needless to say, again, one final time, we encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Amazon.com, purchase your copy of Our World is a Family. You can pledge your support for Miry, for Jennifer, for their wonderful illustrator, Nomar Perez. Leave a 5-star review. That is, again, one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for the wonderful team as well at SourceBooks Kids, to remind them that they are doing wonderful work, again, for children, parents, families, educators, those who love great children's books, and of course, refugee families all across the country and all around the world. This has been such a pleasure and a joy to be able to have the both of you on the program. The impact that you are making on children right now through this book is absolutely amazing. And this is truly one of the most beautiful books. I've done publicity work and interviewed children's authors, all of this for nearly a decade. And this is just one of the most heartfelt, real, genuine books that has ever been birthed into this world. This might not be the last time that you hear Our World is a Family on PR from the Heart. Put a pin in that for the future as well, too. I wish the both of you a wonderful start to your spring, and thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the Children's Book Spotlight series this week. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Raise your hand if you have had fun here on episode number 146 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. Our World is a Family. Isn't it such a heartfelt children's book? We want to express our gratitude and our appreciation to Miry and to Jennifer for being our newest neighbors here at the Children's Book Spotlight series and PR from the Heart. Such a wonderful book that we had the opportunities to be able to share. And there are many more magical trolley stops to come, as we're now almost in the month of May, and sooner than we know it, the summer is going to be here, which I'm super excited about. Raise your hand if you're excited about the summer almost being here as well, too. We see many hands from little ones on screen, especially for that as well. If you are a children's author and you would like to be able to share your inspiring story in the release of your brand new children's book on a forthcoming edition of the Children's Book Spotlight series, you can connect with us via our official website at prfromtheheart.com, or you can connect with us via any of our social media platforms that you now see on screen. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at PR from the Heart. We want to give 2 tips of the cap. First of all, to one of our favorite neighbors. We had mentioned him in our conversation with Miry and with Jennifer. You remember him and you love him as the beloved Mr. McFeely on the long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We know him and we love him as David Newell. Each and every month, David joins us for the PR from the Heart Neighborly Reviews bookcast, where we deliver the newest heartfelt reviews from the newest children's books from our shining stars in the kidlit community here at PR from the Heart. I'm super excited to be able to share that episode number 14, our special in-studio edition of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast, which took place at Point Park University's Center for Media Innovation. It is now available. You can head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com, or of course, you can simply just access that via PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel in the process. So if you are a children's author and would like for David and I to be able to review your brand new children's book on a forthcoming edition of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast, you know where to connect with us in the process as well. 1 tip of the cap as well. There's technically 3 tips of the cap. So we've got 1 over to David, 1 tip of the cap to one of our favorite neighbors here in San Diego, California, the wonderful, gifted, and talented Laura Kavanaugh, who is the host and executive producer of San Diego Living. She is our official co-host on Empowering Reads for Kids, the official television book review segment of PR from the Heart, which airs each and every month on the CW San Diego CBS8. We want to thank our friends and neighbors at the CW San Diego CBS8 for this wonderful mug that you see us drinking from on the Children's Book Spotlight series. If you would like to be able to have Laura and I review your brand new children's book and help it to come to life and to share it with children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books in America's finest city, San Diego, California, if you would like to have your brand new children's book be shared on a forthcoming edition of Empowering Reads for Kids on the CW San Diego CBS8, you know where to connect with us at prfromtheheart.com or any of our social media platforms. And one final tip of the cap to some of our favorite neighbors also here in San Diego at Unity Church of El Cajon. We are proud to be able to give back to the community here in San Diego through the Unity of El Cajon Story Time with Mr. John. If you are a children's author and would like for me to be able to share your brand new children's book on a forthcoming edition of Unity of El Cajon Story Time with Mr. John, you know where to connect with us at prfromtheheart.com or any of our social media platforms on screen. One more final time, Our World is a Family. It is now available. You can head on over to the official websites of both Jennifer and Miry through Miry's list, along with staying connected with both ladies via their social media platforms. We've included that in the description below, in addition to the link on Amazon, where you can purchase your copy of Our World is a Family. Leave a 5-star review. Again, that is one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Jennifer, for Miry, for Nomar, their wonderful illustrator as well too, and the team at SourceBooks Kids, as they are doing wonderful work for children, parents, families, educators, those who love great children's books in the process, as well as for refugee families all across the country and all around the world. We are super excited for more magical trolley stops in the process, but before we go, as we hear the trolley, and when we hear the trolley, we know that it is time to go. If this message, Our World is a Family, that we are all neighbors, that we are a global family. If this message, this episode of the Children's Book Spotlight series with Jennifer and with Miry has helped to open your heart, has brought more healing into your life, more joy into your life as well too. If you feel that this message needs to be shared with someone in need, we encourage you, if you haven't had the opportunities to do so, to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel and to share this very special trolley stop that has been episode number 146 of the PR from the Heart Children's Book Spotlight series as well. We want to thank all of you for your continued support of PR from the Heart, for your continued support of the Children's Book Spotlight series, for your continued support of children's authors and illustrators, such as Miry and Jennifer, again, who are doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books. We want to thank all of you for your continued support of local libraries and children's and independent bookstores, truly some of the pillars of our neighborhoods, of our communities all across the country and all around the world. But above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home, the children of the world. Our favorite neighbor, one last time, one last tip of the cap to Mr. Rogers. He reminded each and every one of us through his time on the neighborhood, and he's still sharing this message with us from afar from heaven. He reminded all of us that we are loved, that we are special just the way that we are. In his private numerology, 143 signified I love you, as there is one letter in I, 4 letters in love, and 3 letters in you. And as Jennifer and Miry were kind enough to give us some of their free time here this week on the Children's Book Spotlight series, we like to share 243. That is our reminder from us to you that we love you. There's 2 letters in we, there's 4 letters in love, and there's 3 letters in you. That is our reminder that you are loved, that you are special, that you are whole, that you are healthy, that you are complete, that we like you, that we love you just the way that you are, that there's no other person in the world like you. Over in the yonder distance in my office, I have that Mr. Rogers Daniel Striped Tiger poster, which I always smile at fondly whenever I walk past in the process. So again, for Jennifer Jackson, for Miry Whitehill, we want to thank them. They did such a wonderful job on this week's Children's Book Spotlight series. Such a pleasure to be able to have them as our newest neighbors here in our neighborhood at the Children's Book Spotlight series. So for Miry Whitehill, for Jennifer Jackson, for myself, John Masiulionis, thank you for spending some time with us here in our neighborhood at the Children's Book Spotlight series and PR from the Heart. This has been episode number 146 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. And once again, thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Goodbye for now.